Welcome to another Shake the Dust podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of having a good friend of mine who's been a friend for a long time, for at least 20 years. I've always looked up to him. He's always had a positive attitude and a genuine humility about himself and just true love for others. He left a mark the first moment I saw him, and still to this day, a lot of times I'll be like, what would this guy do? He's not Jesus, he doesn't claim to be, but I look to his life and I can learn a lot. In this episode, we talk about things like humbling yourself leads to greatness, out-serving your partner leads to getting everything you need, learning from your failures, and understanding that life is not about you. This guy lives in Park City and is picked up touring in the backcountry, and I have the pleasure of introducing to you my good friend, Greg Spencer. I am super excited to have you on this Shake the Dust podcast. This is a passion project of mine. Basically, as the intro says, I want to bring people on that have made an impact in my life. And you're one of those. You're one of those special guys that I know this sounds kind of weird, and I was thinking of a good way to say this, but when I think about a situation that I'm going through that I'm like, either it's a tense situation or maybe a little confrontational or just not sure, I'm kind of think, man, what would Greg do in this situation?
That's humbling. That's
I
kind of
know,
you.
I understand. I totally get that, but I felt that quite a few times in the past. Since I've known you, and I've known you for quite a while. I think at least 15 years, maybe a little
Yeah,
longer.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been good. I have a ton of respect for you. Um, and uh, and so before we kind of get really started, would you mind sharing a quick backstory, just a little bit about yourself and kind of where you came from and what you're up to?
Sure, of course. Was born in Denver. Started skiing when I was 6 and fell in love with the mountains and sliding down the hill. Um, Really cool story. My folks were incredibly influential in my life. They're both gone now. My dad grew up on a small farm in Louisiana. Loaded box cars in Denver to get through business school, became the number 2 guy in the company, and then a Fortune 500 CEO, a professional singer, an amazing athlete, college athlete. Um, just one of those really classic rags to riches kind of deals. But his legacy to me was that everything in his life, his family, his career, his health, was a gift. And so as a teenager, I grew up with a mindset that uh, I was a rich Christian in a hungry world, uh, with tons of opportunity that I had little to no control over. Um, I had fun in college, stumbled into graduate school, stumbled into a career. And, the career story is a combination of unwarranted opportunity and unearned favor, um, and has just been fantastic. Corporate life turned into climate change business, turned into social venture in East Africa, which has turned into the biggest swing for the fence yet of trying to create a new marketplace that will impact people's lives. And so, um, I've had lots of opportunities to travel in the developing world,
Mhm.
seen countless teenagers and men who their only choice is to do what their father and their grandfather and their
Mhm.
great grandfather before them did.
Mhm.
And it's humbling to
Yeah.
think that I could travel the world and start companies, and just the list is crazy. So
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think we have a common interest in Africa. I know you've got, we do. My focus is Uganda. I've got
hmm,
my brother from another mother is over there. His name is Sanko, and he's an angel over there doing some amazing things in Kampala. And I know you guys have done some really cool things with and I'm actually going to list them. It's okay. I think are you guys still doing the Stove Man? Is that still
uh,
part?
Stove Man was a video for the Paradigm Project,
Yes.
which was the social venture.
Okay.
We're not, we did a few episodes of the Stove
Yes.
Man to try to introduce it in a way that
Yes.
was interesting and
Yeah.
what's the term, edutational or something.
Yes, I get
So,
it. Yeah. Well, awesome.
yeah.
Well, cool. Hey, let's get into it. So before we do, is it true that you eat banana bread every day?
I wish it was true. I wish it was true. Laurel bakes about 5 or 6 loaves at a time, and I burn through it in about 3 weeks. And
Okay.
she's a little under the weather, and so I've been out of banana bread for a week, and it's
Okay.
I can't wait till she's healthy enough to redo it.
Love it. I grew up in a bakery, and so we had
Oh, wow.
we had a lot of banana cake was my favorite, and that stuff is dangerous.
I'd weighed 500 pounds if I grew up in a bakery. I
Yeah.
love sweets.
Well, you can either go one of two ways, right? Either you just become large, or you just it's learn
Yeah.
to kind of not hate it, but you don't, the sweets aren't, I'm not
Moderate,
into
yeah.
that. Yeah. So, and then is it true that you've been with Laurel for 42 years?
Yeah, 43 in May.
43.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. It's
Congrats.
one of the best decisions in my life.
Yeah.
My dad used to say, don't get married when you want to.
Yeah.
Get married when you can't imagine living the rest of your life without that person.
Man,
and
it's good. Your dad's a special dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good advice.
Yeah,
it's what I followed it. I ended up marrying my best friend. So
yeah, she's a sweet lady. On that note, that's probably the reason, and how I know you. I actually can't remember the exact time when I met you. I know it was through Mountain Life, the church that we went to. I believe it was through there. But the impact that you left on me, and we talked about this a little bit, but when I really thought about it, it was actually deeper than that. The reason why you impacted me was I watched you before I even met you, and how you treated your wife was probably the thing that I was drawn to. You see a lot of relationships, and they're great, good, whatever it may be, but there's sometimes you see that special like spark that you're like, whoa, that there's something really special there. And the way that you treated Laurel, just the way that whatever it was, you walked in the church, there was something special about you and Laurel for sure. But we're talking about you right now that I really kind of like leaned into and wanted to know more, and so that really impacted me a ton, your love for Laurel. And also too, and I think maybe a byproduct of this, and I'm kind of just assuming, is your empathy towards others. I think that's kind of probably from the stuff that you've done has translated into the work that you've done, is your empathy towards others. And so I kind of would like to talk about that. I would kind of like to dive into that a little bit with you. Not too long, but just spend a couple moments just kind of getting to know you a little better. These are questions that I've never asked you before, so I don't know what the answers you're going to give, but I would just love to know. And if that works for you, maybe we can go from there. Does that work?
Hey, this you drive. I'm happy to follow.
All right.
A wise man once said that he who loves his wife loves himself. And I think there are two pieces to the empathy. I think a lot of it is just how God wired me. It's interesting. We've been working in Africa for 12 years. It's been a passion. You can talk to a lot of people, and we all have different passions. I mean, we're all wired differently. And so some people kind of immediately glaze over, and some people become just enthralled with what you're doing. The description is the same. Yeah. It's the reception and how what you care about that's so different. And so I don't think I chose that empathy. I really just think that was part of what God wanted in my life, in my heart, as a driving force for the choices I would make. Yeah. And then, Laurel has MS, and it's a tough disease. And frankly, fortunately, she's doing dramatically better today than she was a decade ago, which is very, very unusual. But if you don't deal with a disability in some way, you don't really understand it. Like everything else, it's just foreign to you. You might intellectually be able to wrap your mind around it, but until you and it's, in some ways it's harder on the spouse than it is on the person with the challenge, because you can bear things or do things that they can't, and so it's your job to try to fill in some of the gaps. And so it's no understatement or overstatement. It's no overstatement to say that it's been a privilege to support her. So
it's really special. On the empathy piece, I'm curious, and hopefully I phrase this in a way that makes sense to you, but has your empathy ever worked out bad for you? I mean, and when
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can you give it? So I tend to be an empathetic person too. And so I'm saying that from my own experiences, it's worked out bad for me as well. But I would love to hear from you. What does that mean? And like maybe a practical example of you've shown empathy and it's come back to bite you in the butt.
Well, so again, back to that unique wiring that we're sort of born with. Part of what really attracted me and helped devise the business model for Paradigm was that in developing countries, women and girls are exposed to requirements of physical labor that seem very unfair. We don't begin to understand gender equality in this country, in my opinion, compared to what exists. I'm not diminishing it here, but compared to what exists in the developing world. And you see the burdens, I mean, literally physical burdens and disqualification from other kinds of activities that culture imposes on women in the developing world. And it kind of breaks your heart. And you see little girls tasked with carrying water and carrying wood and doing things that in our culture, makes no sense at all. And so, part of the reason for the business model of distributing cook stoves to rural women was a desire to improve their quality of life and give them time to be able to do other things. And so, that kind of empathy becomes a value that sometimes diminishes others, or if allowed unchecked, causes mistakes to be made. And so I have developed concerns or compassion for women in different situations because of things that they've suffered that, was kind of, it was over the top. I needed, frankly, to back off and just recognize that wasn't part of my role. And so, we all have these individual value systems that drive our choices and our investments. And I'm really proud of what Paradigm accomplished. But I've recognized that I have to put boundaries on how I respond to it, because unchecked, it becomes inappropriate. And it's a mistake.
Sure. Real quick, I think it's important. Just give me a quick backstory on Paradigm, just so the listeners understand what that is.
The backstory was left the corporate world, started a climate change firm, felt a responsibility to do something that had a much more direct impact on people's lives. And so the idea of using carbon finance, the climate markets, to do development work in specifically ways that improved health and income and opportunity. And that resulted in a last mile distribution of household cook stoves in rural East Africa. So Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda. And it's an incredibly tough business when you're selling durable, expensive products to the poorest people on the planet. But it is beyond transformational. It literally defies description in our culture, what a little cook stove device does to the income, the time, the physical health. Indoor air pollution is the leading cause of death in the developing world. And so, and young girls get to stay in school rather than hunting through the forest or walking miles to get to the forest in order to gather wood for cooking. You don't cook, you don't eat with no refrigeration. So
Oh, that's super powerful. Okay, so as far as the empathy piece, appreciate you sharing that. So let me get back to Laurel. How I think we could all benefit from some not relationship advice, but just people advice, how we communicate with other people. How have, I mean, 43 years, it's a long time, and it's easy when you truly love someone. Like I get that for sure, but how do you keep it fresh, and how do you communicate? And then does your relationship with her, if it's stress, does it affect your relationship with other people, or how do you manage that?
it's a really, really big question
I know it
and a
is.
45-minute answer.
Yeah.
Um, you know, in the last 20 years, so I'm 64, Clay.
Mhm.
In the last 20-ish years, I've become enamored with and increasingly committed to an economy that is the antithesis of the one that is propounded by our culture. Um, the idea that uh, humbling yourself leads to greatness, that serving others leads to rewards, that generosity and giving leads to wealth, all of those counterintuitive sort of principles. Within that, my thesis of marriage is that when each partner chooses to outserve the other, your needs are met in ways that you can't imagine or reconcile. It's completely counterintuitive, but it absolutely works perfectly. Both partners has to be committed to it, but when your choice is to outserve so that you're trying to be ahead, remarkably what happens is that, first of all, you take the focus off yourself, which is an essential component of it. But then the benefit you receive is twofold: from seeing a person that you love benefit, of having it your goal for them to become the best person they can be, is it self-rewarding, but the satisfaction, the freedom that they then feel to respond, not out of obligation, but out of a recognition of your commitment to the partnership, it drives this upward spiral, this energy, this commitment, this joy of being together. So, I mean, I can honestly say that our marriage is better today than I think than it's ever been. We enjoy each other more today than in any time in the 43 years. I think we could both say with complete candor that the only thing that either of us are afraid of is living life without the other one.
Wow. Yeah. That's powerful, Greg. And it was a loaded question. I wanted to hear you share it in a way that made sense. But I mean, you're a living example of that. Anybody that knows you like leaves a better person. I know I did in my interactions with you. And I mean, it's just such a pleasure talking to you. And your humbleness is, it's genuine. I know. I mean, it's how you live your life. It's how you live your life with other people. It's how you've done your work and all that kind of stuff. And that's really, really commendable for sure.
You're kind and you're
Yeah,
great,
I'm not.
and you're generous.
Yeah,
No,
and
you
I
are. You
appreciate
are.
that. I
No,
appreciate
you
that.
are.
All right, so then we'll change the subject. What
All
what
right.
would you
Fair.
say? What would you say? Because we can all learn from failures as well. What would you say is your biggest failure in your life?
Um, I have a brain that loves creative, tactical solutions. I mean, I thrive on that stuff in business. And, my corporate career was about negotiating in really tough situations, trying to find solutions. the downside of that is it's sort of a fix-it personality, and it's very easy to see a problem and decide that you might have an idea how to fix it. And I think compassion is really sort of effective compassion is a lost art in our culture, where we see a problem, we want to fix it, and what's really needed is the metaphor of, instead of trying to get rid of the mud puddle that somebody's sitting in, is to just sit next to them and let them know that you're in it with them, and not to try to solve it. And so there are a number of times in my life where I saw a problem, I thought I had a prospective solution, and what I really needed to do was just enter the difficulty with them. And I think, frankly, you and I may have had a couple of those situations where hopefully I did it a little better than I've done it other times. And so there are a lot of situations where what's really required is just a willingness to understand where the other person is.
Wow.
And to be with them in it.
Yeah, that's really timely. And this is definitely, this podcast is about the difference maker, which is you. But as a quick example to validate that, to me, the way my brother reached out the other day and just out of random just texted me and goes, Clay, I just want you to know that, like, I know Luke is hard, my son who's got special needs, but I just want to affirm you're doing an amazing job, And I responded back to him like, you know what, I find that, Chad, thank you so much for that. It's awesome that you do that. But the bigger picture, and this was on a thread with my family, we'll go back and forth, and he shared that on that thread. And I said, the bigger thing is that you didn't come in and try and fix it. You didn't try and be like, oh, what was Clay or whatever. Because all you did was that you just saw me. You just saw me in my situation. And so like I wouldn't say that I'm in a mud puddle, because I'm very blessed. I mean, love Luke, and he brings a ton of blessings, but he's still really hard. And the fact that the people just see that and didn't try and fix it, he just acknowledged it, that's a big thing. And I think I really appreciate you sharing that, because we don't have to fix people. A lot of times we don't. We just need to see them. We seem to sit with them, like you said.
The only people we have the responsibility to fix, obviously, is ourselves. Yeah. And the truth is, most of us are not very good at that. I'm certainly not. I'm so grateful that God is interested in having that role in our life, and he's the only one who knows how to do it. So
this is just, I think this may be the last question I want to ask you. And how big of a part is faith in your life?
I can't imagine. I really don't understand, honestly, how. I think everyone has faith. I'm gonna change that. I think everyone has faith in something, themselves or opportunity, or but I can't. First of all, I can't imagine the career path I'd had if God wasn't involved and directing my steps in ways I never could have imagined. But the idea that when you come to the realization that life isn't really about you is so freeing, that you don't have to have an identity that's validated by culture or performance or career or anything else. You can rest in the reality that you have been created for specific purposes, and that at the end of the day, what's required is availability, not ability, and that we're each called to do different things. And the freedom of not trying to be famous or rich or the best looking or whatever, the freedom, just know that you're loved, that you were made for a purpose, you were made for relationship, and that I read a couple of days ago a quote that when you find the door to your heart, that truly central private place that only you can access, when you find the door to your heart, you found the door to the kingdom of heaven. And being able to meet with a God who knows and loves and cares and unconditionally accepts you is the greatest privilege, the greatest freedom, the greatest treasure, and gives you a purpose that literally began before you were born and continues after you're gone. And everything else in that context or perspective, the freedom it gives has been the richest part of my life.
Good way to put it. Thank you for sharing that.
Hey.
I love it. On a little lighter note, tell me something you're passionate about.
I mentioned that I started skiing when I was probably 6 or 7 in the mountains of Colorado. With COVID and ski resort reservations and all of that, this year I bought alpine touring gear, a new set. The last set I had was 20 years old.
All right.
And the ability to skin up a mountain in the wild. We did it 10 days ago, 7 miles from where we parked the car, and then climbed from there. And just to be alone in an alpine setting and skiing untracked snow with good friends. I mean, it was, I don't know if I've ever worked harder physically. I love endurance stuff, and this was challenging.
Yeah.
But oh man, it was so refreshing. It was just spectacular. So I love being in the woods.
When you got to the top, you're in your skivvies, right? you shed so many clothes. I'm living in Charleston now, but last year when I was in Park City, I got into it as well. And man, there's nothing like it. Getting out there. It
is spectacular.
It is
spectacular. Yeah, it's better. It's better than cat skiing. When you earn your turns, they're just that much richer. So,
and you don't know that until you actually do that. So if there's something you've never done, the experience of just climbing up and just having incredible conversations or just being alone with nature it's pretty special. So
it's awesome. Yeah. To do it with a bunch of good friends and including my son and son-in-law.
Wow.
It was awesome.
That's a good passion for sure.
We need to do it. You need to come back to Park City.
I'll be back. I'll be back for sure. There's no doubt for sure. It's I kind of look. It is my home right now. Charleston is my home, and I'm blessed to be here. I'm loving surfing. That's fun. So I'm doing a lot of that, learning how to do that. Cool. So it's a new challenge for me, but it's awesome. Cool. Greg, this has been great. I just want to wrap up. I just want to say just a huge thank you for who you are. And I love being able to actually, for me, is something that I've been wanting to do for probably a couple of years, but actually have it come to fruition is really special for me, that I get to give people like you a platform just to share a little bit about who you are and what makes you who you are, and in my life, a difference maker. And so I just wanted to thank you for sure, and wanted to see if you had any like last minute comments you wanted to add before we kind of call it good.
I do. And you're not allowed to edit this out. So that's my preface. I know that you're in charge of editing, but I think it's remarkable that, first of all, you take the time and have the perspective and the value system that says, I want to honor other people who have made a difference in my life. That says tons about you, Clay, that this isn't about elevating Clay Weldon. This is about Clay choosing to honor and elevate, encourage other people and appreciate them. And I've watched you with Luke, and have not parented a child with special needs, and so I don't understand. But the challenges are evident to anyone who watches you, and your attitude of grace toward him and kindness and recognizing him as a gift. I know he's brought great things into your life and taught you many things. I do understand that, but still, it is more than commendable how you have chosen to love and care for and befriend and honor him. And so, right back at you. Okay. Well done. Well done, buddy.
I love it. Greg, thank you so much for your time. And we're gonna wrap this up now. Appreciate it, and all the great comments, and we'll excited to see this thing live.
Come back and see us, buddy. See you.